guys not having enough male friends and therefore making your wife your only friend, there is a hell of a lot of risk there. And it places a lot of strain on the relationship too. Because the reality is, loneliness is a killer.
I tell you what I've noticed, as men start to open up with each other, judgment goes out the window.
You know, one common regret of the dying is, I wish I would have spent more time with the people I love and spent less time at work. Have you ever noticed that it gets harder to maintain friendships as you get older? Today, we are diving into why it's important for you to make an effort to keep friends as you get older. We're going to talk about Blue Zone communities and the benefit of the role that community plays. And we're going to pull in a lot of insights from the amazing man I've got by my side, Mr. Mark Hainsworth. He is our head of coaching. He has decades of experience in working with men. And we're going to really get some key insights from you and from your experience with the guys.
Cool. Hey, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for being here, brother.
Long way.
Where have you come from?
I've come from Cape Town via the UK. And,
It's not far then.
No, it's kind of 9 hours of jet lag, and it's the dry air here today. It's getting me. It's like, whoa, I'm in a different environment.
I get it, brother. I arrived last week, about 27 hours, similar journey to you.
Yeah.
Been here a few days, so hopefully we'll not mess this episode up then, you and I. So I want to dive into the impact of not having friends. You know, I think one of the key elements that I believe the men join the brotherhood and the inner circle for is that sense of camaraderie, right? We see when the guys get together, be it on a TPM trip, be on a trip that they arrange themselves. We've seen it as they stick around for years, that the bonds they develop, how those bonds serve them in their life and in their journey. And I think it's very easy to fall into the trap that I think a lot of guys have definitely fallen into at least one time in their life. And that is the pitfalls of making your wife your main companion. Now, there's some nuance there as well, because there's some benefit to having a certain mentality of her being your best friend and such. But, you know, as a guy, if you don't prioritize making those male friendships, and you do then, as a result, kind of default to having your wife be the person that is your main companion, well, there's pitfalls there. So I'm curious, what's your experience of this? Like, what have you experienced in your own life, your own journey? I think you're good at keeping male friends. You're always telling me how you get with them. But I'm curious what you've been through and what you've seen with the men as well.
Yeah, so what's really interesting, I mean, I got married, let's start there. I got married when I was 28. I worked in an organization. I used to travel the world selling thermometers, funnily. Not quite fancy thermometers, and I had a couple of guy friends at work. And then at home, I was with obviously the wife was at home. She worked as well, so she had her own career. But we did quite a lot of stuff together. And when the marriage started to get to its crisis point and we headed towards separation, what's really interesting was I reached out to some of my old friends. And what fascinated me was the way that they were just there. The guys were just there. They'd noticed I'd been missing for a while. And the other thing that I really appreciated was some of the really honest feedback I got from them about how they perceive me. So in this process of separation and divorce, I was questioning myself, like really questioning myself. And if I look back on it, some of my closest friends that I went back and saw and said, this is what's going on. One, it was really scary for me to open up and say, you know, I'm feeling like not good enough, feeling like I failed. And so to open up to them and say, this is what I'm going through right now was scary. And every time I did it, one of the guys would say, yep. And I did either share a story where they'd experienced something similar, Or they were able to look at it and go, hey, that's not you. That's not the Mark I know. The Mark I know is different to the way you're showing, to the way you're experiencing myself at the time, So there was a level of male support, which was brutally honest, which I enjoy. Actually, looking back at it, really empathetic. And there was a lot of humor. Because a lot of my buddies have got great senses of humor, which is where we connect, and they can kind of call it as it is with a smile on their face, and then we can have a good laugh about it. So that was the first time I realized, hey, there's something really powerful here about having male buddies. After the separation, I went to live in Chicago. I worked on a job there for 3.5 years, and I worked with a bunch of 8 blokes. And not only did I work with them during the day, but because we were all expatriates working on this project, we used to socialize at night. And the connections that were made in that time were just irreplaceable, absolutely irreplaceable, to the point now where if I get in touch with one of these guys and it's 20 odd years later, and it's just like there's immediate connection to those times, which is where we connected 20 odd years ago. But when we get together now, it takes nanoseconds before that connection is experienced again. It's like, it's timeless. It's timeless. So you can pick up with these types of friendships any time in your life. And there's something there that is irreplaceable. In my world, it's irreplaceable.
Yeah, I think you're very right, very true. It's been my experience. In all honesty, now I've found myself in the past 5 to 10 years not doing a good enough job of keeping up with my male friends from yesteryear, if you will. 10 years ago, a bit longer than 10 years ago, I started down this path of like self-discovery, and I knew I had to change things in my life. My life wasn't working in the way that I wanted it to work. Back then I was, late 20s. And part of that meant leaving my hometown and just leaving certain friendships behind, certain people behind. It's kind of now come full circle because there's 2 guys in particular from I made friends with these when I was 17, 18 through until now, even today. But I didn't see them for a few years. Didn't really speak to them for a few years. We're just kind of in my own journey and experience. And as to be fair, and them as well, as they had families and had demands and such, we just grew apart. And quite frankly, it wasn't a priority. I didn't make it a priority to maintain a closeness and a connection. But in recent years, I've reignited that. And to your point, there's nothing better when you can go meet a friend and just pick up where you left off, right? And knowing if you needed to, you could call them and they'd be there. I mean, it's priceless. But it goes to this, one of the first pieces here, because I was, again, researching around this. It was talking about the impact of not having male friends, the research was. And two of the points, the first one was around the impact on emotional and mental health. And the study showing the importance of having male friends and how it provides, which kind of goes to what you said a minute ago, it provides emotional support, reduces stress, and can help you navigate life's challenges with a trusted peer group. The second piece was around having shared interests and activities, which kind of goes to your second point. And the research talks about the importance of engaging in hobbies and activities with male friends not only strengthens your bond, but also enhances overall well-being and happiness. And I think it's so easy for men as they start to make strides in their career and they start to form a family to neglect those male friends, especially entrepreneurial men.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think they're so used to lone wolfing it, of carving their own path, of doing it their own way, of at times, honestly, not allowing themselves to get attached to people, because if they get attached to people at work, then it makes it harder for them to maybe fire them or hold them accountable or whatever it may be. Those lines get blurred. I think as a result, they then keep everyone at arm's length. And the other story that I hear a lot from the men is as the men become increasingly successful, they start to question, what does somebody want from them?
Mm-hmm.
So if they're making new male friends, then are those people becoming friends with them purely because of what they can get?
Ulterior motive.
Yeah. So there's a whole mixture of things in this recipe that then contributes and coalesces to these men becoming lone wolves, as we've spoken about, and not understanding the impact of not having male friends.
You know, as you tell that story, I went to see my parents last week, and my dad, since he retired, has been a sailor. He had a little boat and he used to go and sail, and he met his buddies at the yacht club. And as he's gotten older, he had to sell the boat 2 years ago because he can't manage it by himself anymore. And then as he gets more decrepit, as he would describe it, he can't get out as much. He's not able to drive anymore. And I look at him, and he's got a couple of friends who come and pick him up at home and take him to the yacht club, and they winch him on board, and he goes out for a sail, and he comes back, and that's his hit. There's something about the shared hobby and the bunch of guys. And when I go out sailing with them, it's fabulous because I can just hear the banter going backwards and forwards.
It's priceless.
Yeah.
It's priceless.
And they also get to, well, certainly my daddy gets to offload a little bit about what's going on for him, you know, and the guys, it's the other beautiful thing about men, they just listen. We don't necessarily try and rescue. We just listen and go, yeah, I got a bit of that going on too. Or I'll tell a story that mirrors back what they're hearing, you know.
I think that banter piece is some underestimated too.
Oh, completely.
You know, kind of like the locker room chat, all right? Just being able to let loose, have that banter, go back and forth, like what it does for self-esteem, for confidence, for the nervous system, the laughter, the fun. It's huge. And the other piece here in the research that I want to bring up, because you mentioned this a moment ago, actually, was the importance that friends can challenge you. Now, they can offer different perspective and hold you accountable to your goals, contributing to your personal and professional development. So if men become too busy, if men choose to pretend like it doesn't matter to them or it's not important, then they're also going to miss out on the opportunity, to your point, of having friends that challenge them, that offer different perspectives. They can become very insular. And then when they are going through these challenges, like a lot of the men that come to us who are going through challenges in their relationship, they don't have anyone to talk to. Well, they don't have anywhere to turn because they've built this facade and this image of who they are within their community, right? And how people perceive them. And there's a lack of friendship. So, to be fair, some of them do. Some of them have one or two friends that they can confide in, but I'm trying to think back to some of the things the men have said. I don't think it's been received very well because they don't know how to handle it. And I think as well, because the friend also knows the wife, they don't want to share too much because if things turn around, they don't want to then blur their friend's view of who their wife is. So they kind of hold back a little bit as well. So they don't really have that space to share very freely and openly to really get things off their chest and in turn get the perspective, get the accountability, get the support, just not feel so alone.
That banter, that camaraderie is kind of irreplaceable. I mean, you know, with the Powerful Men, we've got the Brotherhood. There's 3 or 4 guys who are based in the UK. Only one of them was a guy that I'd worked with in his activation method. But I was coming to the UK en route to somewhere. I think it was to do a reset in Windermere. And I knew there was a spare weekend. And I knew one of the guys was coming to help out at the Alpha Resets. So I said, why don't we get you together? He was American. With a couple of the English guys. So we organised a cottage in the Peak District, and 4 blokes who, well, I'd never met them all face-to-face. I'd only met one face-to-face. We got together, and it was like we'd known each other forever. And it was just like this click, and the humour starts going, and the banter, and then obviously because of the work that we do in the Brotherhood, there's the challenging. There's guys challenging each other, and there's the edginess where men start to, a little bit of one-upmanship and competition. And it was just such a healthy piece. And at the same time, a couple of times during the weekend, a guy would drop into that slightly vulnerable space and share what was going on. And we go, we got you, buddy. We've got you back. You know, and there's so there's the emotional support, there's the challenge, there's the fun, and there's the possibility to really open up and share with other men about what it's like being a man.
Yeah, which leads me on to my next point: the pitfalls of making your wife your only friend. You just can't get that from your wife. Well, no, I don't think you can get that from your wife. I'm thinking of Amelia. I can certainly banter with Amelia, but the banter I have with her is very different to the banter I'll have with the guys. I can certainly get support from Amelia and that feeling that she's got my back no matter what. And at the same time, it's just different from a group of guys. It's just a different energy that gets brought. You know, I think men understand how to listen to men. You know, I think men often have to learn how to listen to women and listen without trying to solve and to collect berries and, you know, all that stuff.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt this episode, but the reality is if you are watching or listening to this right now, then you are looking to better yourself. And I applaud you. You're one of my people. And I want to give you the opportunity of taking massive action. So if you haven't joined the activation method yet, it's our flagship program. Do what thousands of other businessmen just like you have done and take action. Be one of the 1%ers that actually does the work and takes action. There'll be a link in the description that'll take you right to a page that'll just give you more information. There is no obligation. Just go check it out and see if it's a good fit for you. All right, let's get back to this episode.
When you get a couple of guys together, there's just something innate there where there's a shared experience, a shared understanding that's unspoken. And they just often know how to just listen, and whether it's dropping the humor or sharing a story like you were saying, you just can't get certain needs met as a man by making your wife your only friend.
Yeah, there's quite a lot at stake, isn't there?
There's a lot at stake, a hell of a lot at stake. There's a balance, right, between being vulnerable to your wife. Like, if you're going to make your wife your only friend and you've got something going on and you don't know the answer and you go and share it with your wife, there can be power in that. But if that's happening often, that's not going to be very powerful for her.
She's not going to feel safe.
She isn't going to feel safe at all, right? Because if you're going to be vulnerable, that's fine, but at least have some kind of direction you know you're going to head in, or at least be okay being vulnerable and saying you don't know, but not have that be the answer every time. Because then she has to step into the role of supporting you and asking you questions and even leading. The polarity goes. It can just mess a lot of things up.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're with another guy, and like you just said, these guys who got together, dropping into the vulnerable space and challenging one another, there's nothing at stake there, right?
There's something, I think, in that male-female connection where to threaten that connection could be quite scary. And if you got good male buddies, I think there's almost an element of male trust. Is like, I'm not gonna be rejected by these fellas.
That's a big one, yeah.
They might tell me I'm being an asshole. They might tell me they feel sorry for me. They might tell me you did great. There could be all sorts of feedback coming back. But I tell you what I've noticed, as men start to open up with each other, judgment goes out the window. As we open up, the judgment goes out of the window. And I'm wondering whether that's a masculine energy piece.
What do you mean?
We're going completely off piste here for a moment, but I did at one stage I went through an ayahuasca experience, which is classed as a feminine energy. And I also did a San Pedro experience, which is classed as a masculine plant. So feminine and masculine. And both of these are psychedelics. And I was exploring what there was in me that I didn't really want to look at. And under the ayahuasca, the messaging was brutal. It was critical. It was really cutting. And it was a brutal experience. Whereas with the masculine energy, I was kind of sitting there all by myself in this forest. And it was like, oh my goodness, I was able to receive really tough judgment on myself, but it came with a warmth and a sense of like a fatherly energy going, well, you messed up a bit there, didn't you? But there's a smile that comes with it. Whereas the ayahuasca, there was this bite, and it was vicious and it was hard. So I'm just sort of comparing the energies now. The piece with, I've got a couple of mates who are very critical. They've got a critical, hard energy, which is quite vicious. But it only happens in the minority of cases. The beautiful thing about the feminine energy, it's got this nurturing aspect if it's healthy, and it's got this very critical aspect and holding those two energies really. There's a warm judgment from the masculine side and a colder judgment from the feminine side. That's been my personal experience of opening up and doing the work in feminine surroundings as opposed to masculine surroundings.
There's definitely a lot more at risk by choosing to open up to your wife. I don't think open up to her absolutely, because there can be a lot of power in that. But in the context of this conversation about guys not having enough male friends and therefore making your wife your only friend, there is a hell of a lot of risk there in continuing to open up 100%. And I think what you said was really good. And it places a lot of strain on the relationship too, right? Because it then puts the wife in the position where she's then having to meet a lot of the social and emotional needs of you, which is a hell of a burden to place on somebody. A hell of a burden.
Well, it gets mixed up, you see. I think it gets mixed up. You know, if I'm talking to my wife as my wife and being open and vulnerable and honest and fostering the connection, and then I want to share something that's going on for me, which might actually threaten the connection. I've got those two things happening at the same time. Yep. Whereas if I can go out and be with my buddies and say, look, guys, I've got this going on in the marriage. I don't know how to address it. And the guys, oh, yeah, I've got a bit of that going on. Whereas, I'm not alone. I'm not abnormal. And I can process it without involving my wife and having to put her through all of that stress.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's working on the connection with my wife. It's not putting that at risk. It's caring for that connection. And yet I'm still able to go and clear out whatever needs to be cleared out so that I can continue to be present in that relationship.
Yeah, I love that. Switching gears a little bit and going to blue zones. So the definition of a blue zone, so blue zones are regions around the world where people live significantly longer and healthier lives, often reaching the age of 100 at a rate that's higher than anywhere else. So some places of blue zones include parts of Italy, parts of Greece, Japan. And one of the key pieces, there's a few things that contribute to this: quality of air, pace of life, which is ironic, say quality of air, yet most people smoke in these blue zones. But one of the big factors in this longevity is the role of community. Because in blue zones, there's a strong sense of community, and belonging is a common factor. It goes back to your previous point you were talking about, right? And social interactions and community, the support role that they play is a crucial role in the residents living longer. And I'm reading that there from a study that's been done on blue zones. The lesson from this is fostering strong social connections, participating in community activities, and prioritizing relationships can lead to a longer, happier life.
Yeah, my feedback on that, it's really interesting. I living in Cape Town. I'm living in a suburb where it's multiple single houses. We've all got our barbed wire fences. And I know the neighbor across the road, and I know the three neighbors to the left, and I know one neighbor to the right, and that's it. And I've been there 20 years.
Wow.
Now, does that make me antisocial? one of my sailing buddies, he's just moved from a similar scenario in another suburb of Cape Town in his early 80s. He's moved into a security estate which is aimed at older people, generally guys and girls above their 60s. They've been there 3 months. They've got a complete set of social connections already. Similar age, able to walk the streets, able to connect, meet the neighbors quickly. There's a community center where they go and they get meals, and there's a gym. And so it's like this village environment where there aren't walls. The whole environment is kind of guarded by an electric fence, but within that community, they've just got this ability to foster connections. And I walked into that place, went for lunch a couple of weeks ago, and I walked in and thought, this is what's missing. Could feel it. Could feel it instantaneously.
Nice.
Wow, there's something here that is just this community feel. And they've got smiles on their faces, and they're all up walking in the morning as best they can, and they're enjoying life.
I know. I wonder. So suicide is one of the either the number one or one of the number one killers for men. I think aged about 35 to about 50.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while since I looked at the stats, and I just wonder how much loneliness plays a factor in that suicide and the suicide rate. Because I'm thinking, if you've got these male friends around you, so you understand the importance of it, you consciously cultivate the relationships in the community, and you've got the kind of relationships that you're talking about where you can bring your stuff and it's all accepted, and you realize that you're not alone, and you're not therefore making your wife your dominant friend or main friend in your life. Would that then contribute to a lack of, or feeling more connected? That'd be a lack of, the opposite of loneliness.
Yeah.
And in those cases, would therefore then the suicide rates then come down?
I kind of grew up on a back street in Burnley. So the piece of my childhood that I remember is terraced house, back streets in Burnley. All the kids played together. All the parents knew each other. The village environment brought up the kids. If I misbehaved and my mother didn't see it, somebody else would see it and sort me out. And I think it brought a sense of there was a more rounded upbringing, for one. The other interesting piece that I see walking into a place like Khayelitsha in Cape Town, which is one of the more working class communities, predominantly black and coloured people, walk into that community, I can feel the connections. I drive down the street when nobody knows me and they'll wave. It's really, really, it's palpable when I get into the townships. It's like, there's community here. But more than that, if you look at a community, places like the place in Japan that I saw on the program around the Blue Zones, those people have probably never moved out of the village in their lives.
Yeah.
They've grown up in an environment where they've got their support system, they've got the family, they've got the cousins, they've got the aunties and the uncles, they've got the friends next door. There's a feeling of belonging. It's just like, this is where I belong. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I've traveled all my life. And so I'm used to dropping into communities and then kind of moving on 2 or 3 years later. Probably one of the things I miss is that sense of community.
Yeah, I'm going to read you off some stats here, because it's fascinating. I didn't intend this episode to go as deep as this into this topic, but I think it's such a huge one. One that just isn't spoken about enough, I don't think. So, social isolation is the lack of social contacts, right? While loneliness is a subjective feeling of being alone, both can have severe implications for your health and well-being. So loneliness has been linked to a higher risk of health issues such as heart disease, high blood pressure, and weakened immune system. So science linking those. Chronic loneliness can lead to depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline. Kind of think about your dad, right? Significantly impacting the quality of life. So I would personally believe and surmise that loneliness, the lack of people, of men having adequate male friends, of a quality connection within those friendships as well would be directly correlated to loneliness and therefore suicide as well. I think those things are going to be interlinked massively.
Well, I think loneliness talks to the disconnect.
Yep, exactly.
And in the disconnect, there's pain in the disconnect.
Yeah, you feel alone. No one gets me.
No one gets me. There's something wrong with it. And then, of course, we go into the brain. Oh, there's something wrong with me. I don't fit, etc., etc.
Exactly, yeah.
Shame fest. Oh, then that drives the suicide.
That's what I'm saying.
Or the pain becomes so great that the kindest thing that I can do for myself is to take myself out to remove the pain.
Yep. So, what are 3 action steps a guy can take listening to this to develop more male friendships in his life?
Well, the first 3 that come to me is find a bunch of blokes that you can connect with.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it really matters where they come from. It could be go and find a new bunch. And if you're going to go and find a new bunch, well, find something where there's a common interest.
Mm-hmm.
Yachting, cycling, playing lawn bowls, depending on your age. So find something that you enjoy doing and then go and join a club.
Mm.
Because then you're mixing with a bunch of people with common interests. And if the common interest is there, then the human connections happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's the common interest. You start talking about something, the rapport builds really, really easily. So yeah, find a bunch of mates, find something that you enjoy doing. And then I'm wondering, do you know what I'm wondering? This comes back to the one of the key values that we got at The Powerful Man. How many guys are there hanging around this world, bored, with nothing to do and no connection? And how much wisdom is sitting with those fellas that could be imparted to our youth?
Mm.
Go and get involved with something for the youth. The youth, in my view, are completely disenfranchised these days. Can't connect because they've been brought up behind these things we call cell phones or tablets. What benefit would there be for the older men to be moving into a mentor role and getting involved with the youth in the community, whatever it looks like? Scouts, organizing some sort of music evening where the kids can come, but just adults getting together and doing something with the younger generations. Because if we don't address it at grassroots level, it's only going to get worse as we move forward.
I love that. I'm going to throw 3 out there as well. Got to make an effort. The guys have got to make an effort. I think they need to realize the importance of this. I think it's so easy for the men to brush it under the carpet, pretend like they're too busy, pretend like it doesn't matter. But if any of this is resonating whatsoever, I would strongly encourage the men to take a risk and prioritize it. They're going to have to overcome feelings of guilt. Going and meeting their friends and doing something for themselves, often the men feel guilty. So they're going to have to overcome that. They're going to have to overcome challenges from their wife, no doubt, as well, because they're going to face some shit tests. Explain to the wife how important it is for them to have male friendships and what those male friendships provide them with. It's absolutely key. Like you said, I agree. Find some shared common interests, whether it's somebody at the gym, whether it's a golf club, whether it's whatever it may be, and take the lead and begin by nurturing those relationships and opening up. Just like the men take the lead at home to collect berries and lead the wife and lead the household, do the same here. Lead the charge on building the friendships. Lead the charge on having meaningful conversations with these guys. Lead the charge on making an effort to get together regularly, whether it's once a month, a poker night, or once a quarter, whatever it may be. But the more regular it can be, the more easily it's going to be adhered to. Because the reality is, loneliness is a killer. We now know that. Science, blue zones, whatever. We know suicide is one of the number 1 killers for men. Those 2 are linked. We also know we've had thousands of men that come to us who feel alone and don't have friendships because they question the motive of people that want to be friends. They don't trust them. They can't be bothered with the stress that they'll face from their wife, and they tell themselves they're too busy. However, given the emotional and social positive impact of having these male friends, it's imperative to cultivate these relationships. And I think about the regrets of the dying. You know, one common regret of the dying is I wish I would have spent more time with the people I love and spent less time at work. That was one of the, I think there's 5 regrets or something. That was one of the key ones. So guys, thank you for joining us. For me, for us, life is about what happens in the moments you create. That's what's going to create a richness of life for you. Having experiences with people you love, doing things that you both enjoy. Don't fall victim to pretending that you're too busy to find friendships. Find men who are going to be there for you, that have your back and who you can confide in, because there are going to be times when you're going to need to rely on those men, and don't fall into the pitfall of making your wife your only friend. We'll see you next time on the TPM Show.